Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
Hey, it's 7 minutes past 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. This is the Two Blokes Chatting radio show. It's how Geelong spends Saturday morning. Now, Rob, I normally arc up where I see people stealing things.
So do I.
And, you know, we have an award-winning segment on our radio program called The Long Run. Yeah. And it's a podcast, of course, folks. If you want to go and have a listen, you can find that in all good podcast stores and the occasional really bad one as well. But under the circus pants, this time round, we're going to let this organisation borrow our segment title. That organisation is the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia, and they're having an event all the way through September to raise some very important funds. Who better to talk about the long run, brackets, the one that the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia are running, than the Chief Executive Officer of the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia, Anne Savage. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you, and thank you twice for allowing us to borrow the name of your segment. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, the Eagles might have had a crack at it at one stage as well, but we don't care about them. We do care about you, though.
And our long run is about being angry. Yours probably has got the name for another reason. Tell us all about how the long run started in your marketing area and what it actually means to highlight this very, very important social issue.
Well, a great question. Look, so a couple of years back, when we'd all been thrown into COVID, our organisation was kind of, was standing talking to each other thinking, how do we keep awareness going through a period like this, through a pandemic, when, unprecedented times. We were looking at September, a National Awareness Month, and not being able to connect with our community. And what came from that was this idea that, let's launch something that people can do from home in their own time, connecting with one another online and really making a difference, raising both awareness and funds for life-saving research. And, we kind of set out, we put a little bit of cash into it, we were a little bit nervous, we weren't sure how it would go, and in the first year we raised over $1.5 million for prostate cancer research and for our support services like nurses and stuff around the country. But the really remarkable thing was we saw a complete transformation in how people were talking about prostate cancer, and probably up until that point, people really weren't talking about it as much as they should have been. It's a highly stigmatised disease. Lots of men suffer through prostate cancer on their own, don't often talk to their family and friends about it, and we know that from some of the evidence that we have. And we really saw a groundswell of support and a validation of what men were going through. And, our campaign tagline was "Help Love Go the Distance," There's a whole bunch of men out there who are really tough, strong men who don't ever want to be a burden to their families or anything like that, who are struggling through a disease that takes not just a physical toll, but an emotional and a psychological toll. And they needed our help, and they came to the party. They joined together. We saw lots of guys making friends in solidarity with others and talking about their own experiences. And from that, we can make a tremendous difference in individual lives. So that was kind of how the campaign came about. And this will be, 2020, 2021, 2022. So technically, this is our fourth year. It's a big year. We're looking forward to getting started next Friday.
I think as you've determined from the program title, we are a couple of blokes. I think it's fair to say that Rob and I are both in the same decade of our life, that is our 60s. We have always, we've grown up like lots of blokes around the place. You just don't talk about that part of the body because it's a bit rude and it's a bit masculine and all that kind of stuff. I suspect if this was big toe cancer, it wouldn't be an issue. Is that part of the problem, that it's the sort of intimacy, it's the embarrassment component of it?
Yeah, look, I think that's certainly one aspect of it. And I guess this sort of stigmatisation occurs at a deeply personal level. So there are a couple of aspects to that. One is just the fact that men generally don't like to appear needy or to ask for help. You know, we have this sort of a culturation of this notion that men have to be strong and tough and there to support their families, to be providers for others. And so when men go down with a disease like this, that's really tough. And a lot of men with prostate cancer, with very serious forms of prostate cancer, will largely appear fine to their family and friends. So that's sort of one side of it. The other side is just the one that you spoke about, which is that, you know, that the prostate gland itself, it's a reproductive gland. So things like erectile dysfunction, incontinence, they can be side effects of your treatment for prostate cancer, and that can be highly stigmatising. It's really tough for any man to go through, but it's also really tough for any man to talk about. You know, we talk to a lot of men on our telenursing service who have not sought help before. You know, before speaking to one of our telenursing team members, they may not have reached out to anyone in the past to seek help for many of the really serious side effects that they're experiencing. And, you know, treatment is available. There are options for managing these things. But, you know, when you feel isolated by your disease and when you don't know that help is out there, it can be really detrimental to a person's overall well-being. It impacts the whole families and communities. And, you know, our organisation is here to make a difference. And, in fact, over the last 3 years, it's largely, you know, as a result of this campaign and the wonderful people who support us, you know, we have vastly expanded our services with, you know, a national telenursing service and expert nurses who are there for men at no cost when they need us, in addition to the world's only prostate cancer counselling service so that we can support these guys. You know, we know that men with prostate cancer have a 70% increased risk of suicide death. You know, so our organisation is here to catch them when they fall, you know, and hopefully to support them before they get to that point. This is really kind of serious stuff for us, and, you know, I've experienced it firsthand myself, having spoken to hundreds of men over the last sort of 4 years that I've been here, and really getting a feel for what it is men go up against when they're diagnosed with prostate cancer. It's a really tough, isolating disease. And, you know, the campaigns like the Long Run and conversations like these today help us make a difference. You know, let's talk about it. Let's remove the stigma and the shame and the isolation that goes with prostate cancer. Let's raise education levels, awareness, talk about the guidelines, talk about PSA testing, and encourage men to get a PSA test. It's a simple blood test, so that we can diagnose it earlier and always beat it. You know, it's a big problem in this country. Nearly 25,000 men are diagnosed every year. It's Australia's leading form of cancer. You know, we should never minimise this disease. You know, often you hear people say, you'll die with it, not from it. You know, that's not quite true. Around 4,000 Australian men are diagnosed every year with stage 3 or 4 prostate cancers that are lethal. You know, it's really serious for us. And we shouldn't underestimate the toll that it takes on these individual men and then on the lives of their loved ones as well.
And one of the other issues that, it's as silly as it sounds, but I have had conversations with male friends, acquaintances, and they have been quite open in saying they would not go to the doctor to check this for fear of having to have a digital examination. They're not prepared to do that. Just to find out if this is an issue, which is a bizarre, silly, stupid, manly way of, well, old-style manly way of looking at it. But those days are sort of gone. As you said, a PSA test, a simple blood test, is the first part of that journey to find out if there's something you need to worry about. So, again, if men are listening this morning, if that's the only reason that you're not having your prostate checked, then it's an irrelevant and silly reason, and you should do something about it, because it's not only your health, it's the effect it has on those around you.
Absolutely right. It's been quite a while since the digital rectal examination, the DRE as it's known, has been used at the primary care level in Australia. So the risk assessment tool for all of us is the PSA blood test. Any GP can order it, and every man who is eligible and at risk should certainly be talking to their GP about it. You know, the consequences if you don't are far more serious and far more uncomfortable. And we hear those sorts of stories every day. Right now we are reviewing the guidelines for PSA testing so that we can strengthen them. And one of the key things with that, and you guys have sort of pointed this out already, is just that we need to do more to raise awareness of those guidelines so that these misunderstandings about the finger test and other things are addressed, so that the misconceptions and the myths are obliterated, and so that we can move forward in a really healthy way to support guys with getting checked, and then if they are diagnosed, to make sure that we support them each step of the way. You know, I had a guy telling me the other day that he'd gone into his HR boss at work to let the boss know that he'd been diagnosed with prostate cancer, which he did, and then the boss responded, "Mate, we're happy to keep it a secret." And he sort of said, "I'm not ashamed of it. I was coming in here for support." And so the signals that he was getting back, and, you know, he reported this back to me in a state of, you know, distress, really, and fair cop, because we don't do that to any other category of cancer out there. So why are we doing it to guys with prostate cancer? And look, we're fortunate as an organisation that a lot of the guys who support us, who engage with our work every day, who lead our support network, which is, you know, a tremendous movement around the country, you know, they're making noise about it. They're trying to raise awareness and start these conversations. And I cannot tell you the difference it makes. And to some extent, all of us got an experience of isolation during that COVID period. It was, you know, hideous. For a lot of guys with prostate cancer, that becomes everyday life. You know, they feel isolated by the disease. Many are socially isolated because some of the side effects of their treatment mean that they're less inclined to go out. You know, incontinence can be a really challenging concern for men. And look, there are lots of things that we can do about it, which is the important role that our organisation plays in supporting guys through this.
So one of the things during the week, and we'll come back to why the story was on the radio during the week, but I caught hold of the fact they were talking about PSA testing and all that sort of stuff. Part of the thing with me, my doctor, I go and see my doctor every year as close to my birthday as I can and get all the blood tests done. And one of them is my PSA. And that could be pounds per square, I don't know, it could be anything. But calling it a prostate-specific antigen test, I think would be helpful, because blokes would realise that that's what it's for. You know, my doctor says, it's PSA, whatever. The word antigen has become something that most people now know what that means, because, you know, during COVID, the word antigen was used a million times. I'm wondering whether part of the issue is it's a bit hidden. And is it because we don't want to be going out and saying, I'm having a prostate-specific antigen test?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a couple of things with that. One thing we know with language is that your tongue can get caught on actually saying and reading the longer form of it, which is why we use acronyms. But the broader point is simply that, and look, I'll speak as right now as the CEO of Prostate Cancer Foundation Australia. I went to do a comparison of how Australia fares, you know, in contrast to our international counterparts in terms of raising awareness and education on prostate cancer. So I went to look at how much different countries spend. You know, it's really difficult to compare Australia's performance because our government spends nothing on it. You know, that's not good enough. This is the leading form of cancer in Australia, and we don't have the equivalent sort of the campaign that we have for breast or bowel cancer. And that's largely because we don't right now have a population-wide screening program, but that should not stop us from educating the community and raising awareness. You know, when I look at our Facebook feed sometimes, you know, it's like we can be, on occasion, the butt of all jokes, but that's what happens in an information void. So we've got young guys jumping on, saying things that are, you know, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this on radio, but commenting on our page, quote unquote, saying things like wanking is the cure. And for me as a CEO, you know, we respond in kind to all of those comments because those guys may one day need us. And it's not on them. It's really on us as a community. You know, certainly the government has a role to play in this, PCFA has a role to play, and then community leaders do as well to bring us out of the dark on this, raise awareness, educate people so that we're no longer the butt of all jokes. It's not funny, you know. And young guys need to know about this just as much as men who are, you know, hitting the age of 40 do. We've sort of estimated, based on our research, that there are probably somewhere between, you know, 630,000 and 700,000 Australian men, yeah, right now who are at least double the risk of prostate cancer because of their family history. So that's really serious. That's effectively a tidal wave of disease coming at us. So, while people can, and this is not a large number of people, but I mean the point is the broader one, that we just don't do well enough in terms of raising awareness at a really high level. And that's why campaigns like the Long Run are so important. We're raising as much as we can to try and spread it across all the areas where we need to spend it to save lives. And education is certainly a big part of that. Research, nursing services, education and awareness is key. And then support at the community level. And we're very fortunate. In fact, one of our biggest and strongest support groups in Australia is based in Geelong, and they've been there for over 20 years. They're doing just incredible work.
And you touched on something there about family medical history. One of the advocates that works in your organisation, David Parkin, former AFL player and AFL legend, speaks often, and he's spoken free of charge at organisations that I've organised with him to do it. He's a huge advocate to support, as a sufferer himself. But he was stunned when he was doing the research to prepare for presentations at the lack of understanding people have of their own medical history, and how important it is that you just need to find out what happened to Grandad, and on both the maternal and paternal sides, your Uncle Bill, all of those things, to understand what you're up against. It's something we don't do enough of.
100%. And look, things have changed a lot. Like, as you guys know, our population is ageing and increasing, and life expectancy is increasing with that. And our risks of prostate cancer do increase as men get older, which is why we're seeing, just in terms of the numbers of men being diagnosed, they just continue to increase. And that's largely because of progress. We're not being killed by wild animals anymore. We're living to an old age. A lot of us are living to an old age in very good health. And what tends to happen, cancer is primarily, and this is almost all types of cancer, are a disease of aging. So as the body starts to decline, it just doesn't function the way it used to. So prostate cancer becomes a really serious concern. And our message to men would be not to be complacent about it, because it's also an eminently treatable disease if we detect it early, which is why the simple PSA blood test is so important. It's nobody wants to reach the age of retirement when you sort of set up to just sit back and enjoy, a lifetime of work, and then get hit with a disease like this. It's really important to be testing for it, because we can treat it very effectively. But diagnosing it early is essential.
The reason it was on the radio during the week, there's apparently a breakthrough where an MRI test will be available at some stage soon that is more accurate than the PSA and more informative. I'm assuming that things like the Long Run, money raised goes to research that supports things like that.
It sure does. Like Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia funded two of the biggest projects in the world, actually, that really helped to change things. So one was called the Pro-PSMA study, which led to the finding that PSMA PET-CT scanning is more accurate than traditional forms of imaging, and allows us to see prostate cancer cells at the very small level, so that we can figure out how to treat them. And the other one was called the Therapy Project, and that has actually delivered a new form of nuclear medicine that is not only allowing us to see where these prostate cancer cells have spread around the body, but then also to treat them with what is effectively, nuclear medicine is largely like a form of intravenous radiation at the very small level. It does minimal damage to other parts of the body, and can be administered in a way that targets those cells at such a small level that you minimise many of the other risks to men when you're treating them with therapies as powerful as this. And that's certainly what the funds that we raise go to. And in fact, we were commenting this week on those findings which came out of the UK. I think what we can say from that, and what we have certainly learned over the last 5 years, is that the use of the PSA test as a singular test for prostate cancer is a thing of the past. So today what happens is that, the PSA gives us an initial risk indication, and it's not entirely foolproof, which is why we have other measures that we can deploy if we need to to actually properly check our assumptions and make an accurate diagnosis. MRI is very powerful in helping us to do that. And that's why you see it being introduced before the biopsy, because wherever possible we'd like to avoid biopsies if they're not absolutely needed. You know, it's not a pleasant experience, it's invasive, it can be risky. So an MRI, if we can see lesions and that help us to in actual fact, deliver a more accurate biopsy, knowing which samples we're targeting and what parts of the prostate, you know, we can advance what we're doing in terms of the staging of prostate cancer and then its management. And staging is a really important thing, so that refers to understanding where the prostate cancer is at the point of diagnosis, whether it's spread beyond the prostate or not. And most people will be familiar with typically 4 stages of cancer, with each one representing an increased level of risk. And, you know, you get to sort of stage 4, and that's when you're sort of talking about your incurable cancers, and then it becomes a case of hoping that we can manage them over the lifetime with the therapies that we've got available to us. And we're in a very fortunate position with prostate cancer. You know, we've got 95% 5-year relative survival, which is wonderful, and that's increased from about 58% just 40 years ago. So many thousands more men are surviving this disease, but we certainly won't stop our work until we absolutely eliminate it.
Well, and we are getting very close to the end of our time, so we need to do 2 things, I think. One, we need to encourage every person who's listening to this program, if they are male and they are 40, as well, people under 40, but men over 40, get to your doctor and get a PSA test done, because that's really, really important. If you are not a male and you are listening to this program, you will know a male who is over 40. Get them to go to the doctor and get a PSA test. It's that important. The second thing I think we need to do is we need to tell people that there is a website, which is thelongrun.org.au. Now, don't go there thinking you're going to hear Rob and I complaining about things. This is far more important. thelongrun.org.au, and that's where you can register to be part of The Long Run. Now, I went to this website before we started the conversation, Anne, and you had 1,180 people who had registered. You've now got 1,182. I'm assuming that means 2 of our listeners have registered while we've been talking.
Good.
You will have, by the end of tomorrow, at least 1,183, because I will be registering. And 72k seems like a hell of a long way to walk for me, but we'll get there somehow.
You guys are legends. That's so good. And I can't tell you the difference it makes. We're really appreciative, and, you know, shout it from the rooftops. It makes a difference. We're just so grateful.
And I must ask, it might seem like a silly question, and I apologise in advance if it's intrusive, but a woman heading up prostate cancer would be similar to a man heading up ovarian cancer. I quite like it because it gives it a maternal softness, empathy and compassion. How did you get into the role, and how have you found the acceptance of you as a woman heading up this very important and male issue?
Well, to be honest, it never really comes up, and maybe that's because I'm a bit alpha or something, mate. I don't know, but to be honest, I think the appointment was sort of made on merit, so that the board had to choose the person they thought was best to do the job, and for whatever reason they picked me. You know, I didn't get a look at who the opposing candidates were, but I was certainly in that fortunate position. And I guess that the commitment that I make is simply to the mission, working my guts out just to try and get the job done. You know, from where I sit, it's a great responsibility. It's also a great privilege, and I certainly don't take it for granted. And, you know, since I have been here, I have spoken to, you know, quite literally hundreds of men over the last 4 years, and I think understanding at an individual level the impact that it has, you know, does allow us as an organisation from a very high level to change things. Yeah,
well, I reckon it does exactly that. It changes the thinking, and I commend your employers for giving you the opportunity, because I think it sends a really good message. So good on you.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate the support.
Well, I will repeat that website, thelongrun.org.au. I've read it 3 times, so I've got no excuse not to be able to find it myself now. Yeah, I'll register. And folks, we'll we'll push this through the Two Blokes Chatting Radio Show Facebook page and stuff. If you want to get on board, you can support financially the cause by sponsoring me. That way it makes it worthwhile for me, and the money ends up going through to the people who need it most. That is the Prostate Cancer Foundation of Australia. We've been talking with the Chief Executive Officer, Anne Savage. Thanks for taking some time out of your day off to talk to us, Anne. We look forward to keeping in touch.
You guys are legends. Thanks again.
Thanks, Anne, so much. Really appreciate it.